Ray, what was a takeaway or a personal application for you?
Yeah, just that concept of God's pursuing love. He's not quick to just destroy us. He wants us and he goes after us and he loves us that way.
Dio?
I appreciated just the reminder that God takes disobedience seriously. How the text points out that even a righteous person, if they would persist in their sin, God will judge him too. And that was something that really stuck out to me and convicted me.
Dave?
Yeah, similar to you, Andre, just the way you drew out, despite God having every right to be angry and us, out of his love, he continues to reach out.
Nathan?
Yeah, I just appreciated the kind of the urgency you had on such a serious matter. Like, this is life, death, eternity. So I thought that was just, the way that you presented it was challenging, but also like encouraging, like this matters.
Caleb?
Yeah, I was struck on the piece about warning being a mercy, that even the way all of us getting to hear preaching so often is a mercy from God, really.
Yeah, for me, just the seriousness and like the culpability we have for what we're doing in terms of speaking the word to people, and that their lives hang on whether or not we do our job and they listen to us. Victor?
I think I was encouraged by your, I don't know, almost fatherly tone of like, hey, I'm telling you this for your good, like listen, this is important, you know, it's already been said, how God uses this seemingly bad situation for our good, you know, excel as a mercy, stuff like that.
Yeah, I was say something similar. There's whatever is happening in this very serious text is for our good, because it's for everybody's good. So it didn't lighten the blow, but it made it matter. So that was encouraging.
All right, and a couple areas or one area that you want to lay down that you've got room to improve.
Yeah, I think, just practicing here with just using less on the page, making it a little bit clearer. I kind of got, like I totally missed I had my gospel connection not at the end, but kind of 2/3 of the way in, and I missed it and started going to the third point and messed up the flow of my sermon, so.
Theo?
I think this is kind of like a hard assignment because, like, I think this passage has a lot to do with like the state of the messenger, and like to preach that to unbelievers is like, I'm not super sure the right way to do it. But I do think that your sermon wasn't super focused on the messenger generally throughout, and I still, even though you're preaching to unbelievers, I still think somehow you do need to keep that emphasis.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt your move to Luke 8 was long and kind of unnecessary. I think a lot of the things you brought up, you could have brought up about reasons we reject the word or don't listen to it without necessarily going to Luke 8.
Nathan?
I thought it would have been helpful if you put out your sermon structure in the beginning, just because I didn't know, because or just like you brought up a whole bunch of points and they're almost like like sub-points,
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of lost. So if you did bring out, like, did you have 2 main points or 3 main points?
3, yeah.
Okay. I think I got those, but there's also a lot other ones.
Yeah, I
where
had the
just
little
kinda-
name, yeah.
So I think that might have helped to
Okay.
follow along, or just eliminate 1 and 2 of this point or
Okay.
something like that.
I think part of that was your first one was so long.
Yep.
Yeah, I had
And
a-
I was like, have I missed the second
Yep.
point? And then you said it, I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
So that might be part of it.
Mm.
Caleb?
So Andre, I really like the piece on love and bringing that up, but I'm not convinced that it's from the text.
Okay.
So you have to wrestle with that. But I felt like it was a kind of above the text, implicit,
Yeah, yeah,
but maybe not the message of this portion.
okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot of reservations about you telling guys that it's a mercy for them to be in
Yep.
jail. I'm guessing you're creating objections in their mind to what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I think what Caleb said earlier, just keeping the tone of the text, like when you move to love, it was like, oh, like here's the sunshine. I was like, this is heavy on the warning,
Mm.
on the death, on the consequence of
Yeah.
disobedience, and I don't know. I felt like I could see your point, but I don't think that was like the emphatic
Right.
tone.
Yeah. To go back to Kevin's thing for a second, I don't think the analogy is wholly wrong. I think you tied it too closely. Like you could even just say, maybe this is God. Maybe you being here is God's mercy to you. But like in this case, it was a fulfillment of God's promise to them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
them being in prison is definitely not the fulfillment of God's promise to them.
Right.
So that's the problem with drawing those close analogies.
Okay.
My big thing is like, so I have a series of questions here. How are sins covered by whoever the Lord is? What is sin? How is sin also transgression? What does it look like to die in the Lord? Is that like in Star Wars?
Okay.
So that's
yeah.
a place, that's a beautiful place for an analogy, right? Or an illustration that will help them kind of grasp it. Because those are like lots of different things that are all kind of related. You actually get in trouble by saying using different words,
Yeah.
other theological words.
Okay.
So especially like when you're talking to prisoners, talking about sin and breaking God's law, that's low-hanging fruit right there.
Yeah.
As far
Yeah.
as something they would understand.
Uh,
But you tried to make it easier to understand by using other words that they wouldn't have understood.
I
You're
like-
also talking about the Queen of Sheba
Yeah,
and Babylon and
yeah.
I like that the prisoners invited you to come though.
And you were like, it's good to be back here, but I didn't leave.
That's mercy for you to be here. All right. What was something you thought you did well, or was a kind of?
Wait, we're only going one round? Okay.
Yeah, 7 of us.
Okay, alright. I'm not.
You can have 2 if you want.
No, we're good.
Just practicing, just trying to see how it works and how much material. I'm not sure I understood this portion that well, but I was just trying to craft it for an evangelistic sermon, and so I was like, okay, so like the love thing, I'm like, okay, so what does this say about God? If he's putting him in exile when he could be, or he's sending him a messenger, so it's like trying to dig into it to find a message. So,
Yep.
kind of doing that. I guess observations.
Yeah. I thought it was the best. Your first 5 minutes were the best, clearest like I've ever heard you preach.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you did a lot of things really well. One of the things that like I think you did that I've only heard you preach once, but I haven't seen you do before, was like you ratchet up like the seriousness of God's judgment at the beginning.
Mhm.
And so you're like, and this is for all the wicked, and not only for the wicked, but also the righteous, and not only for the righteous, but also the messenger. And so,
Yeah.
and I thought that was like a really effective way to like drive that point home.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, when you turned to like God's mercy piece, like, and you tied it into your analogy, and like how hard you hit like God's seriousness on sin, like gave you a lot of, it worked a lot for you when you're talking about him, like, yeah, and then God still like loves you. So I thought like those types of like rhetorical emphasis that you did was really good throughout.
Dave.
I really loved, I thought there was a lot of things you did well, but I really loved your intro.
Yeah.
In terms of orienting, in terms of like capturing attention, bringing up a need, I just thought it was an excellent intro for where you went with this text.
Mhm.
Can I ask how much of that was written out?
None of that.
Wow.
Interesting.
Which is, I think, part of what made it, like, you felt so natural and up and energetic. I think that was a lot of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Nathan.
You kind of were talking about this God who's bringing judgment and this and that and this, and then you just asked that question, why is this God so uptight?
Mm.
And I just thought it's a good thought and a good thing, because like, yeah, I mean, this God sounds like just this awful thing, and then you kind of went into listen to all the love that he had for these people, and I thought that was a turn that probably needed to be made at some point. So
Andre, having said what I did about the love piece, maybe not coming from the text, I appreciated what you did with John 3:16 and preaching that, and I was encouraged just thinking, you know, even when we might go on a direction that isn't exactly the text, that's God's word and it has power to change people's lives. But secondly, the way you used it was good, because you brought out how it's conditioned on trust, which is in keeping with the necessity of listening from the passage. I thought that was well done.
I thought you used your main point well and argued to it with your points, right? So listen, right, and live. And then like you had to listen for the serious of disobedience, listen for the love of God, listen for the consequences. So you just kind of were reinforcing and driving that all the way home.
Yeah, and the flow and cohesiveness of that, like, listen part, I think you also wielded it to elicit a response very clearly and urgently. Like, you even said, like, you don't even know, like, when you're gonna die or whatever. You need to respond to this, like, today.
Yep.
And I thought that urgency came across in a way that was like, okay, if I'm sitting in a prison and I realize that this is the consequence of my actions, I really need to, like, consider that there's something greater here, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to that thing about the first 5 minutes. It was funny. We had that appreciation for, like, Billy Graham comes out of the gates and he's just like, you know, tonight this is going to be the most important decision you ever make, that kind of thing. And it did, and that could feel like fake a lot of times. Cause it's like, okay, because you can just dramatize it too much. But your whole, like, it was very high stakes when you were introducing this thing, but in a very natural way, where it was like, oh, okay, this is serious, and this guy thinks this is serious, so I should pay attention to this. But it didn't feel like theatric in the bad sense of the term. It was just like, wow, okay, this is crazy. What's he about to talk about? So I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, thanks guys.